Hey, welcome to the Nate Whitson Show. I am your host. Excited to talk to my friend here from across the pond today. I'm going to introduce him in just a second here. But this is a show for Christian men who are trying to learn how to break bad habits, build better ones, get unstuck in different areas of their lives where they feel like, man, I'm dealing with these same things, these same issues over and over. How do I figure that out? How do I train myself in godliness? That 1 Timothy 4:7 is really kind of a centerpiece of the way I think about learning about behavior change. And I always kind of point guys in the early parts of this conversation to say, although I teach men how to change behavior, it's really not about behavior at all. Like the difference between atomic habits and get in the fight in the ministry that I help lead is that this is about becoming the men that God meant for you to be. It's aligning behavior with belief. And the one thing that makes the world kind of look at Christians negatively in particular is they go, well, you're full of it. You talk a big game, but you're a hypocrite. And so it's this idea that our beliefs, what we say out loud, and then the way that we live and the things that we do, there's a disconnect. And so everything that I do is really geared around trying to help bridge that gap. How do we train in righteousness so that our lives are connected between what we do and what we say as Christian men? And so we tell stories like that. Today's story is going to be one of those, of how God is just working in Nairn's life and in our lives as men to bridge that gap, right? To where we don't just talk a big game, but we live it fully. And so if you're a Christian man, welcome. Glad that you're here. Glad that you somehow stumbled on this podcast. You can kind of look, if you're watching on my YouTube channel, you're seeing like pots and pans and weird stuff here. You know, definitely not a professional studio. I tore my Achilles about 2 months ago. And so I'm still hobbling around and making do with what we have here. So you'll notice it looks a little different maybe. But listen, if you're new to Get in the Fight, to Nate Whitson Show and all the rest, go to getinthefight.club, click on free stuff, and then you can get this newsletter that goes out to Christian men all over the world 2 times a week. You can join our community called the Fight Club. You can do all that free. There's a ton of free stuff there. Click on getinthefight.club, free stuff. Get all those things you can. Follow me, follow Nairn. You're going to see and get to meet my friend today on X. We're really both active there on X. It's how we met up, actually. And so anyways, we're just here to serve. And that's what this is about. And so today's conversation, again, is everyday Christian dudes. I think you'll probably hear it in his story as he shares more. You'll certainly hear it in mine if you follow me at all. There's nothing special. It's Jesus in us that makes anything about us who we are. But there's something really cool about listening to Christian men's stories and journeys and going like, man, I relate with that. And I know you're going to do that today. So I hope you're encouraged if you're a Christian man listening to this by this story. And I hope that it leads you closer to Jesus. That's the hope of the world for Nairn and I. So my friend Nairn, welcome to the show, brother. So glad you're here. This has been a journey getting to this point. So thank you for being here.
Yeah, very much so. Like I'm excited to be here, and I'm like you said, just a servant of the Lord, just trying to serve people as I serve the Lord. And yeah, I'm glad we finally managed to get it in the calendar.
This is gonna be amazing. So yeah, man, thank you so much. So Nairn and I met on X, actually. We just like kindred spirits. I think you kind of can see, like, social media for most people is like, this is stupid. I hate it. I don't want to be on here. And I feel that way half the time. But I've met some really incredible people from around the world. You in particular, just like all of a sudden we're like, hey, let's connect. And all of a sudden from around the world, now all of a sudden we can meet and go like, this guy's legit. This is a guy that loves the Lord and he's serving the Lord well. And so I think just kindred spirits met through social media and was like, hey, let's continue this conversation and record it sometime, because I love who you are in Christ. But man, your accent sounds like you're not from Michigan, where I'm from. So
no, certainly not. From the very, very top of Scotland. So you can tell by my thick Braveheart-esque accent. I always get compared to Braveheart. So yeah, it's good to connect with Bond, so.
That's amazing. Yeah. So, okay. So I think a lot of Americans are very, like, they're not going to even know where Scotland is. If you talk about the UK, we're not really sure what that means. So give us just a really quick geography lesson about where you're at. Is
Okay.
Who's in the UK? I don't even know that we know where it is.
Yeah, that's funny. So UK's got 4 countries, well, 5 now. It used to just be Scotland, England, Ireland, Wales. And then Ireland split into 2 countries. So you have Republic of Ireland and Northern Ireland. So it's 2 Irish countries now. So 5 countries in total. in terms of like a geography lesson, just count it as the whole of Europe. On the map, most Americans will just be like, it's just Europe. It's kind of like how we see the States. I just see it as California, Wyoming, Michigan, New York. It's just the kind of four corners, the rest in between them, Florida down the bottom. So
That's right.
It's kind of that whole lesson. So yeah, it's weird being able to connect with the pond, considering we have no real idea on each other's culture or where people have been and all that sort of stuff. But yeah, quick geography lesson is it's practically in Europe, but it's not quite. But if you just count it as Europe, then nobody will know.
Perfect. That helps people a lot, I'm sure. Or it just helps me because I'm ignorant, and so
yeah. I think we had this conversation last time as well. I think we pulled up a map and went through it all. That was funny.
Yeah, and it's like, and we had laughed too. Like everybody in America, they're thinking like, yeah, Braveheart. Like when you laugh at that, just like there's an Braveheart like changed Americans. Where we're like, I want to go to Scotland. I want to wear a kilt. No, let's just say that too. Let's just get some of this like stuff out of the way first. Are you wearing a kilt right now?
No, that's a common one. Funny enough, I actually tried on my first kilt a couple of weeks ago. I was on holiday at passing past through my grand's house. I was in my old granddad's kilt. He's now passed away, so I got a chance to try his kilt on and kind of honor his legacy, the one he got married in. So that was nice. That was a nice moment. It's one of those things where you can hand it down generation to generation. It's not something you see every day in the street. We don't walk about in them like we used to. Sadly, no. I wouldn't mind going back to that era myself. No Wi-Fi, no nothing, just kilts. But it's one of those things where there's a lot of nostalgia in a kilt. You have the different tartans. Like, again, most Americans won't know they come in different tartans. You have like a typical old Scottish clan will be like the Macintosh clan or the McIntyre clan. These are old Scottish names. Last names, so they basically handed their kilts down through generation to generation. So now everybody who's a McIntyre wears the McIntyre kilt at their wedding or whenever they're going out. It's typical weddings, but if they want to whip on a kilt for a special occasion, nobody's going to stop them. But it's less common these days. We've more been westernized just to be wearing suits and ties. But
Bummer.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of tradition and a lot of meaning in the kilt. And I hope to get married in a kilt one day too. So.
That's amazing. Yeah, that's amazing. Yeah, like we have no clue here. We have no clue. We only know Braveheart and we love it. So, but I think like that's pretty neat. Like there's a lot of connections to the past through the kilt. It sounds like into family, into clan, and to belonging to something that's way bigger than you. I love all of that. So really cool.
I always get slightly. We have this joke in the family. Right? I get slightly annoyed because our last name isn't proper Scottish. Our last name's actually more English. So our family came up from England. And obviously there's a big rivalry between Scotland and England. So I'm this super Scotland, patriotic guy, Braveheart, but I've got an English last name. So it's almost like if I was in Canada, but, I'd originate from the States, that kind of internal States versus Canada. It's kind of like that here. So that's a bit of a bummer. I'd like to have like a proper Scottish name, Macintosh, McIntyre, McDonald, all the clansmen names, but it is what it is, I suppose.
Can you just add a Mick to your last name?
Well, you know what I mean? That would be ideal if you could just change it, just add it on. But I don't think that's legal. But it would be. I might petition for that in the future.
You're like, look, Scottish pride here. Like, go to your government and make that happen.
Yeah, that'd be sweet.
That's great. Well, let's stay there. Like, so we know nothing of what Christianity's like, what life is like. Let's just we'll build to your story. I want to hear about how you came to Christ. I know it's a unique story inside of your own family even. But like, what's life like? Tell us just kind of like as a kid, like what is it like to grow up in Scotland, in your home? Like, what are the things that you do? Give us a little inside look at that. Yeah,
well, I might throw a bit of shade on the Scottish people here, but there's no harm done because I love my country. They're all God's people in the end. But Scotland, especially where I stay, is quite isolated, quite quiet. So there's not a lot to do here. There's most people will go out most weekends and get drunk or find vices to, numb themselves, hookups. Another big one. If you didn't have a new partner every weekend, you weren't cool in that sense. And I always wanted to be cool. I always wanted to be one of the lads. I always wanted to be going and getting the girls. But thankfully, when I was kind of 12, 13, I signed a pro youth development football contract, so soccer for the Americans. So soccer, and then that kind of took me away because soccer was a big passion of mine. I was good at it. I wasn't, the best, but I worked hard at it. It was everything I wanted to do. It was almost like where Jesus is now. He's top of the pedestal. That's where soccer was for me. You know, I used to eat, live, breathe soccer. I talk about soccer. I'd watch it all the time. I train practically all day, every day. So much so that I was just this skinny guy who could never put any muscle on. You know, I ran the 800 meters because I was that skinny. I was the best at the 800 meters until, you know, I grew up, and you know, it was all these things where everything started to become about soccer for me. And then when I signed that contract, I was like, wow, you know, thinking I was Billy Big Bollocks at 12 years old. You know, I used to travel 3 hours every week to play these matches, maybe more, 5, 6 hours, then return. So, you know, kudos to my dad. He drove me up and down the country. If he hadn't done that, I'd never been able to chase that dream, but that dream died, and I'm grateful it died. So by November 2019, just before the pandemic, there was talk about contracts on the line, who was getting re-signed. People were going into pro youth. Instead of pro youth, they become actual professional footballers, and I was on the verge. So they hadn't offered me a contract yet, but I was still hopeful. I'd been out the first half of the season with injury, rolled my ankle twice. Long story short is it came down to these last few games. It was like, well, look, if you can show us if you're good enough, then, you know, there's room for you in there, you know. And I was like, this is it. I was like, this is the dream right here. Couple matches left. Played some of the best soccer I've ever played in my life somehow. My final game, scored 2 goals, which is uncommon for me because I never used to score goals, just more like the midfielder. Again, soccer. And in American football terms, it'd be kind of like the Tom Brady who normally throws the passes. That was me. I didn't, not the touchdown guy, but the assist guy.
Thank you. No, that's helpful, especially from so University of Michigan guy.
Towards the end, I turned into the touchdown guy, and I was like, well, what's going on? You know, and had really good fun. And then, although thinking I'd done everything, I turned everything over, and I was going to get there. They said, look, we've not seen enough, so you don't get it. So, you know, 16-year-old me travels 7 hours back up the road and cries his eyes out, you know, because that was it. It was up here for me. It was everything. It was the be on end on. If I didn't make it there, then I wasn't worth anything. I was never good enough, you know. So there was a lot of heartbreak in that for me. Then there was a lot of having to tell friends and family, like, look, you know, people who invested money, sponsors. It was like, look, I've not made it. You know, so there's a lot of pressure on a kid that age as well. But I'm grateful for that 3-4 year window, because that took me away from everything else that would have been a distraction. You know, because all my friends, guys I knew, they were clubbing, they were drinking, they were hooking up. So if I hadn't been for the football, again, I was raised in I'd say a good household. I had great parents who gave me strong values. I knew that smoking was bad. I knew that drinking was bad. You know, my dad being in the police force, I was kind of like, everybody was like, when are you coming out? And I was like, well, look, my dad's, you know, it's illegal to drink at my age, so like I can't come out, you know. But everyone was like, oh, just have this, and everybody does it. And thankfully, I think I've only been to 2 or 3 parties in my life, and I think I was back by 10 p.m. You know, I had a really a blessed mother who again was raised with good values. She knew right from wrong. She raised us well on that. And yeah, I never really got into the partying scene, which I'm grateful for. I never really got into the scene round about girls and all that sort of stuff. Again, I've stayed away from that, thankfully. But it definitely served a chapter in my life, was the soccer.
Yeah. And
then when the Lord took it away, you know, we're coming into 2020 now in the pandemic. That's when I started falling into the ways of the world. Like, I always grew up and, you know, I'm still chasing women, but it was more of a like the online presence of women. It was more pornography. It was more lustful attractions. That started to fill my spirit more as the pandemic years went on and everybody was alone. It was like, well, what else are we going to do? It's like, there's no school, there's no work, there's no soccer, there's nothing for me to do. So I just sat here, played video games, watched Netflix, ate junk food, you know, filled myself with lust, with gluttony, with sin. And then eventually it came to a point where I was just broken down. I was like, you know, I wasn't a man before. I was a boy, but like the boy just became, I had a sense of purpose back then, which was soccer for me. And then once that was taken away and replaced with all these things that I never really had time to do, I just fell deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper. Then, you know, throughout the pandemic, I was filled with so much fear as well about, well, what if I go out? Am I going to die? Am I going to pass it on to my mum, who, you know, she's immune compromised, so she might die? And it was like just this fear, and to get over the fear, I filled myself with lust, with sin, with distraction, with dopamine, and that's then became how my Twitter page was basically born. So 2021 December, it got that bad. I was like, well, look, I'm just wasting my life. I was like, it's just not working for me. Everything I'm doing is just bringing me deeper and deeper into mishap and just into feeling like crap from a guy who used to feel on cloud 9. So December 2021, I started, I came across a couple of Christian videos on Instagram somehow. I dedicated to the Lord because I was never on Christian Instagram. I was hardly ever on Instagram in a sense. I know I started seeing some people that, they were just filled with the joy. They were filled. I was like, there's just something different behind those eyes. Like they don't have what I've got. They don't have anxiety. They don't have depression. They're not filled with lust anymore. They're not a slave. It's like these people are free. And so December 2021, I asked my mother for this. And that basically there is the living bread. That's basically changed my whole life. Obviously, glory to Jesus, but through His word, the word of God, that's what saved me.
Yeah.
So
and they're holding up a Bible. If you're not watching this, you're just listening to the podcast.
I don't know if you can see that NLT.
There you go.
So a common one here in the UK.
Yeah, that's amazing. So let me just ask you. That's an amazing journey to do that. And you've talked about your parents being moral. Did you grow up Christian?
That's a good point.
How does that work? You know what I mean? Because not smoking, not drinking is all good things, but is there Jesus involved?
No, Jesus was not. I never heard the name Jesus apart from when I was sitting in religious and moral studies in school. And even then, you then had all the other distractions that they would point at you, like Judaism and Buddhism, and it was like covered them all. So it was like you don't know what the truth is because there's that many. And as a kid, I actually remember sitting in that class, religious and moral studies, and the teacher goes at one point and says, "So hands up, who believes in God?" Nobody puts their hand up, but I had this innate tugging. Something was like, "Put your hand up, put your hand up." And because I lived in the fear of man, I was only 13, 14, 15. I was like, I don't want people to think I'm weird. I'm not putting my hand up. But I still remember it now. It's weird. That's one of the only things I can remember about being in high school is remembering that I just wanted to put my hand up and I wanted to say, well, I believe in a God. But I just didn't have the courage. And I must remember that for a reason because, again, it works into this whole testimony we're going through right now that, I always used to think there was something there, but, I just never really touched on it. And I was always like, I shouldn't feel anxious about taking my dinner plate and walking past the whole school of 500 people. I shouldn't feel nervous doing this, that, and the next thing, but I didn't. I always had these something pulling at me. It was like, oh no, you don't need to have that. You don't need to be like this. And there's the good Bible verse that sums it up is, be still and know that I am God. And during the 2021 towards December, I was finally still. There was no distractions for me. I'd said, look, I'm not playing the PlayStation anymore. I'm not watching Netflix. I'm going to try and do things, go outside. I'm going to try and clear my head a bit. And when I start cutting off these things, pornography, video games, Netflix, the best thing that describes it is be still and know that I am God. Because finally my brain could comprehend that, okay, this isn't working. What you're doing is just making you feel worse. Be still and know that I am God, and there must be something in here. So to come back to the story about parents, didn't grow up Christian. But like I said, the story always wanted to believe in something. But my mum always mentioned God. God was mentioned a lot, but never Jesus. So she grew up in a Catholic and Protestant house where her dad was Catholic, but her mum was Protestant. So again, it was kind of washed under the carpet a little bit. Again, my grandmother today, she speaks about God the whole time. She has her worship music on in her house. She reads her Bible. She watches her sermons. She's dialed in more now than I think what she would pass it on. But where I'm from in Scotland, there's a very religious background. There's not really like a relationship with God. It's just like go to church on Sunday and that's you're saved, you're fine. But through the week, these people are, I don't know what everybody's doing, but from the Scotland that I saw up here, it seems to be like Sundays are great, but Mondays to Fridays, Saturdays, just do what you want. But there's not. Specifically where I'm from, there's not much of a church culture. But down towards with the capital cities, there's a lot of like a big Catholic versus Protestant. A few Americans might know Celtic versus Rangers, Glasgow Celtic and Glasgow Rangers, two biggest soccer teams in probably the UK, but the two biggest in Scotland. And they have this great rivalry of Catholic being Celtic because they're from Ireland, and Protestant being Rangers, and these people fight, and there's people being killed and stabbed, and you name it. I don't know the ins and outs because I don't really follow soccer anymore, and I've never really got into it, but I just knew that, it's like, if that's the religion we're showing the world, if that's God, if that's Jesus, then that doesn't make any sense to me, because why would a God act like that? If Jesus walked the earth, why would he act like that? And again, as I was watching soccer and I was coming in to read my Bible, I started thinking that I was like, if these people are religious, as they say, then why are they killing each other over a soccer match? Right. I'm like, it just didn't make any sense to me. And I come back to the point of be still and know that I am God, I started having all these questions and all these sort of moments, light bulb moments where something was going off in my brain. It was like, well, that doesn't make sense. Well, let's find out the truth. Well, this doesn't satisfy my soul, so let's find something else. So that leads me to December 2021. I asked for one of these. I didn't read it. I put it off. I ignored the truth for another 4 months. I kept living. I went back to sin, and I was like, okay, I'm just going to keep doing it. It's fine. You know, that all kind of give to get where you're like, it's fine, but then you do it and you feel like crap, and then it's fine. You convince yourself it's fine again, and then the devil comes back. It's fine one more time, and then before you know it, you wasted like another 5-6 months just going in the same cycle of practically death, where you just like you just don't want to be here anymore in a sense, you know.
Yes.
So then April 2022 comes around. For the last 6 months, I've been dealing with a really bad wrist injury. I told you this the first time we spoke. Really bad wrist injury. Could barely make a cup of tea. I was icing it every night. I was putting arnica on it. I was doing whatever I thought at the time was great. And I was going to heal it, and nothing would take it away. I still had to work, so again, working probably would work. You know, using it probably didn't help, but it just wouldn't go away at all. And I had this physical education exam to pass in the middle of school, so I had to take this exam, and I was playing around the golf, or I think it was like 4 holes, as my PE teacher watched me play, and he marked me out a score for, you know, determination, mindset, physical skills, and all that sort of stuff. It was out of 30. And he basically said, look, this is the last time you can do it. You've put it off long enough. You physically can't do it. If you don't do it today, then I have to put you down for 0. And I was like, well, I physically have no choice. If I want to pass this exam, at the time, exams were like the be-all and end-all. You know, another one of those things, and like you want to get good grades. So it was like be-all and end-all for me. I was like, I've got to show up. So I remember in practice in the garden, I was like swinging the club, and it was still sore. So I came up the stairs, and I remember seeing a video the night before, as I just told you. Saw a video the night before that said, if you've ever doubted that God is real, then you should just ask him. So I sat on the stairs just outside here, just 5 meters outside here, and I go, look, God, I have no knowledge of you. I don't know what your name is. I don't know who you are. I don't know where you live. All this, you know, all these sorts of questions go through my brain. I know completely nothing. But if you're real, then you'll just take away my wrist pain just for this round. And I'll come back to that in a minute, just for this round. So I get up to the golf course, swing the golf club, still a bit of pain, and then as soon as I get on the first tee, bang, hit the first shot, no pain, gone. Couldn't believe it.
Amazing.
The PE teacher was like, great shot, and I was like, I was still in my head, I was like, yeah, good shot. I was like, you know, I was like, okay, I'll just roll, you know, I'll just roll with it. Managed to play the full 4 holes. I even ended up playing an extra 5 holes by myself because I just still couldn't believe it. I was still like, I was like testing this wrist, and there was just nothing there, and I was trying to do all this funky stuff to try and get the pain back, and it just wouldn't come back.
Amazing.
And I just couldn't believe it. And then it gets funny as after it, as soon as I finished, picked up my ball, walked off, and went to type up my phone to tell my parents to come pick me up, and all of a sudden the wrist pain came back.
Amazing.
And it was just then I had the epiphany moment where it was like, what did you say? And I said, God, if you're real, you'll just take it away just for this round. Just for this round.
Yes.
And that's exactly what happened. It was there before,
wow.
It was gone during, and then it was there after. It ended up healing fine. But I think God used that as that's part of my testimony. If that had never happened, then who knows? We might not be sitting here today, you know? So it came from
amazing
being inquisitive about who these people are on Instagram, why I've came across them, why they look so happy. Okay, I'll try out the Bible. Let's see what it says. Put it on the shelf. Didn't touch it until after that moment where I was like, God, if you're real, then you just show me. And again, God doesn't owe me anything. You know, I'm a servant of the Lord now, knowing that that's like maturing in the faith, knowing that God doesn't owe me. You know, and I can't ask God to just keep showing me signs because that's what wicked people do. Show me signs, show me signs, show me signs. Like I've seen God now. I know God's real. I know his name is Jesus. But at the time, something so significant to me being exams, now looking back, is very insignificant. I couldn't really care less. But it was so significant to me that God showed up in that moment, used that as part of my testimony. And it's probably a weird testimony. People are probably thinking, well, I've never heard of that before. And I was like, well, neither have I. You know, it's strange, it's weird, but that's kind of how it went down. And then from there, just started reading the words. I read it cover to cover, which I wouldn't recommend because it was a wee bit of a slog. But, you know, then I started getting into the Gospels, which, you know, you start hearing the miracles of Jesus and they just change your perception of life. You're like, okay, well, maybe this guy's real, maybe he's not. But those that, you know, if those are real, then he did some pretty cool stuff. You know, healed the blind, healed the sick, made turn, you know, wine into water, water into wine, and all this sort of stuff. And I was like, well, you know, maybe this is. And then the more you read it, the more you study it, the more the more it changes your heart and desires. And I just became this new guy who didn't desire soccer anymore. I was like, cool, it's done. It's like, it's not me anymore. It's like, if I was to go down that road, I'd have to be selfish. I'd have to travel the world and all this sort of stuff. So maybe God saved me. And now looking back, I know He did. There's a lot of stuff during the pandemic as well, where there's a lot of stuff going about where you had to do this and you had to get vaccinated or all this sort of things going about like, during the pandemic. And I was like, well, maybe God saved me from a bullet there. And looking back now, I know He definitely did. And that kind of brings me to like just building my faith. I started having all these desires disappear, like my desires for lust, my desires for sin. I didn't want to waste time anymore. And like, I'm not perfect. This is like, if anyone listens to this, I'm by far from perfect. Like even this year, the first half of this year, which I'm sure we'll get to, it's been one heck of a ride for me in terms of being prideful, falling back into sin, running from God, not reading my Bible, not opening it, being lazy, falling back into old things. We'll get to that in a moment. But for me, it just became this whole whirlwind of, okay, let's start eating right. I had all these injuries as well. And I remember praying at the time. I was like, Lord, I've got all these injuries. I've got this anxiety still here. It's like, show me the way. And again, I remember somebody else in the health space I remember she basically said, when she came to Jesus, she said, Lord, show me how I can heal my issues. And this woman, she used to be really skinny, like anorexic almost. And the Lord then started to show her these things. And she then became like this healthy woman. And she's now pregnant at the age of 21. So she felt, and like hard back then, but never felt pregnant just because of the way she was. So I started praying the same thing. I saw this and I was like, well, Lord, I've got all these injuries. I've got all these physical pains of like, I'm suffering, my family are suffering. And I was like, what, show me what's wrong. It's like, just show me. I just want to know everything. And that's when I came across Twitter and specifically health Twitter, which can be a great place if you're looking to start learning. I just remember soaking in all this information. I was like, well, maybe red meat's not as bad as I thought it was. Because at the time I was vegan as well.
Were you really?
Yeah, that plays into my testimony as well. So
I didn't know that.
We're going on a bit of a long story here.
No, you're good.
So since the age of 2, I got diagnosed with a heart murmur in my heart, which means my heart used to, for every time yours would beat once, mine would beat 1.5. So it was almost like a skip. And being soccer, it always used to get monitored and all this stuff. And, my mum came across vegetarianism and like detoxing the body from all the processed food, which again, I was always skinny. I didn't eat loads of processed food, but I live by the everything in moderation, Snickers bars. Again, everybody's to their own ideology. If that serves you and you want to keep going down that road, fair enough. But I got to that at the bottom of that road and I just couldn't do it any longer. So we went down towards veganism and vegetarianism and starting kind of detoxing the body. And I went back to the doctor once and he was searching for ages trying to find this heart murmur and the small hole in the heart. And he said, well, I can't find it. He searched for ages and ages. I said, I can't find the hole and the murmur's gone. Wow. And I said, wow. Okay. I mean, looking back now, that's Jesus again. Even when I didn't know him, even when I didn't deserve it, even when I didn't know who he was, that's Jesus. That's part of the story. So then move forward to here. I went proper vegan, like raw vegan, and I went like spinach smoothies and almond and all this sort of stuff, which I now know is pretty much influenced by demons. And the Bible tells us that like people will tell you to avoid these foods, even though they're made by God. That's demonic. Again, I don't know the exact verse, but I went down that whole road and then my issues got worse. My anxiety got worse. I started losing my hair, skin issues, gut issues. Again, I became skinny fat. So like for the first time, I used to be the skinny guy. I was now fat. I was bloated in the face. I was bloated in the body. I just ran into like, it was like running into a brick wall and just getting like flattened by the wall. It was like, I couldn't catch a break. So I started praying, Lord, show me this, show me this, show me everything. And then he started to show me that, look, yes, you can be Christian and be vegan. It's like, I'm not going to go to hell for being vegan, but like, how's my quality of life going to be here on earth? It's like, I've got anxiety. I've got all these injuries. It's like, nothing's moving the needle. So change something else. And then I started reading the Bible and it talks about, in Leviticus where they're sacrificing animals or goats or sheep or cows to the Lord. And, they're giving him the best bit. They're giving him the ram fat and all this sort of stuff. And I started then thinking, well, if they're giving him the best bit, then surely that means whatever God made in there is good. And they're giving him the best. They're giving him the fat, but they're eating the meat. So I then started thinking, again, it comes back to the be still, know that I am God. I finally had opened the Bible. I was finally still. I was cutting out distractions. And I was finally able to hear the Lord speak and plant these thoughts inside my head that said, these things I've made are good.
Yeah.
But humans have made them bad. So like, again, if you go into the supermarket and, you might think you're finding a nice loaf of bread, but it's got 45 different ingredients in it. Again, God didn't make the bread that way. Bread is just 3 ingredients. It's wheat, flour, salt, olive oil. You make it yourself or you buy it from a bake. I then started to come out all these more epiphanies where I was like, well, everybody's sick in the world. Why is everybody sick? It's like,
Mm-hmm.
well, because we don't eat the way God eats, told us to eat, gave us the foods. We don't look after our bodies the way He told us to, and even Christians, we're living like the rest of the world. And I was
Mm-hmm.
like, well, and then I was like, more. It was just like the whole 2-3 year from 2022 until now. I'm still getting revelations. It was just revelation after revelation. I just kept thinking, wow. I just kept learning new stuff about the way to live and how to look after my body and how to detox it and how, you know, if I'm living in a natural state with the way that God designed me, how that makes me feel. You know, like I told you before we came on, injuries that I had seemed to heal quicker. You know, yes, there was mindset parts of that, but I started to have joint pain disappear. My anxiety went completely gone. Like, I'm talking like my anxiety got so bad that I couldn't even take a fork off my parents without thinking that it was contaminated with their germs.
Wow.
That's how bad. Like,
Yeah.
really, really bad. Like, obsessive. Like, no, it's fine. I'll get my own fork. I'll get off the table. I'll go and get it. I'll wash it from the drawer. I'll then dry it and then I'll eat it. And it became like this mind exhaustion where I was just like, you know, I just sitting here
Everything's unsafe.
like so heavy. And looking back now, I know that like burnt, you know, that made my health issues 100% worse. And I feel like I'm just starting to return to a baseline now with putting all the good food and looking after my body properly. But like, that's kind of why I preach what I preach online, because I know, you know, 1 Corinthians 6:19 says our bodies are the temple of the Holy Spirit, you know?
Yeah.
And if we're feeding it junk, then we're going to feel like junk. And I was the guy who fed it junk, even before I knew God. But even up until I was still feeding it junk, and I knew it was junk. And so I come back to this whole message, and this is how I started the page. And like you, I'm a like, I hate social media. I like what it does, how you have access to be able to bully someone straight away, or all these different vices that can just numb you and distract you. I'm not a social media guy. I'm not an internet guy at all. And it's weird that I'm now on the internet and I'm trying to build out this business, because God was like, well, your desires aren't to be on the internet, but, you know, I've got this mission for you. And I was like, I toyed around with it for ages, like probably 6 months to a year. Me, you know, reading my Bible, I was like, nah, nobody will listen to me. No, what's the point? I'm only in my 20s. Nobody will listen to me. What's the point? I don't have the confidence to do that. You know, I hate myself. All these sorts of things. And I was like, I just can't do it. And then April 2024, I was like, well, what have I got to lose? You know, I was like, I don't have a job. It was like, if this can somehow become my income as I serve other people, then I've won the lottery in a sense. And maybe the Lord's calling me into it for a reason. And I still kept growing in my faith, still kept learning new things about health and fitness and all these sorts of things. And I just kept asking the Lord to show me more. You know, and I always come back to the Bible, where the Bible says that ask and you shall be given. I think it's Matthew 7 verses 7-8. It says, ask and you shall be given, knock and you shall receive, and the door will be open. So I just kept on knocking on everything. And again, didn't have a job at this point. I quit my uni degree because it was, long story short, I didn't enjoy it. And I was just finally, it was just kind of me and God, and I was just living life, you know, 19, 20 years old. And I had this time, like, be still, know that I am God. I had all this time to then question everything, you know? And, you know, again, not a polished article. I've still got many lessons to learn. I've got father lessons. I've got marriage lessons. I've got all those lessons, and I can't wait. But, you know, I'm grateful that I went through all that, you know, losing the soccer, the veganism, the injuries, because it brought me to here. And I even remember being in those seasons and being like, I just want this to be over. You know, I can't wait to look back and just say, I'm glad it's done. And now it's like, this is like a revelation here. I'm like, well, it is. I've came through that now, and I'm now in this season of serving the Lord, serving other people, passing my wisdom that I got through the pain onto other people to help solve their pain, because maybe they've not had the time to sit in the presence of the Lord and ask Him all these sorts of things. You know, like most people, you know, 20 years and above, they're at uni, they've got families, they've got jobs. You know, they go to church. These people work hard. Even Christian men, they work hard. So they don't have time to sit and be like, well, I'm 30, 40 pounds overweight, or I've got this health issue, or I just can't seem to do this. And it's like, oh, I don't have the time to figure it out, so I'll just put it down to next year. And then next year I've then added another 10 pounds of weight, and another, you know, and it becomes this whole thing where it's like you're in this constant cycle of knowing what you should do, but not having the time to do it. And now looking back, I'm like, well, that's the reason for my season. The reason for that season was God was preparing me to pass this on to men, to serve other men, and in this kind of this business and this fitness ministry that I'm going into. And, you know, it's ultimately to serve other people, to serve the Lord, and it'll give me a sense of purpose and be able to help and fulfill the mission. So I don't know how long we spoke there, but that's the kind of, I wouldn't say that's the long story short, because that was quite long. That's maybe the long story middle. So that's
you did a great job, man. I mean, connecting the dots through your story is really fascinating. But what I like that anchors it is something that we say in Fight Club all the time. So like one of the things we do in our community for Christian men is we have a private app where Christian men from around the world gather. And then Monday through Friday, we go live and I just do a 10-minute reading. So we read through the entire Bible every single year together. And there's a reading plan that we follow. But whenever we do it, every morning that we gather, I'll hold up my Bible and I say something. This kind of connects to what your life's about. I hold up the Bible and I say, this is my Bible, God's word. If I read it and do what it says, it will change my life. Mm-hmm. That's the mantra that we say every day. Mm-hmm. And the reality is what your story what's happened in your story is so fascinating to listen to. For somebody who grew up in the church or around Christianity, you've grown up in a home where it was good people without Jesus. You went to a school that nobody raised their hand that they even believe in a God. Mm-hmm. And what changed it for you is you started reading God's word. Yeah. That somehow you saw Christian people living a slightly different thing that created an interest. You went to God's word and it's brought life, because what you've basically have described is what the mantra is that I say every time I hold it up. That if you read it and then do what it says, it will change your life. And you are a living, really unbelievable testimony of, the wrist injury. When you say wrist, by the way, I'm telling everybody, because they're going to listen to this and be like, what did he do? He had a wrist injury. Yeah. But your wrist injury where you asked God and said, God, I don't know you, but if you'll show me, that is one of the most powerful stories I've ever heard, because for many of us here, probably a lot of guys listening to the show, they've heard about Jesus forever. They didn't come to him like you did, where you're like, I don't even know your name. We just go like, well, we know who you are, but we just don't really care. Mm-hmm. But when you come to God honestly and genuinely like you did and said, I don't know you, but if you'll show me, I'll follow you. Mm-hmm. That is the story of ages past, man. You're a continuation of this incredible story of where God meets people in real life in 2025, maybe in your case, 24. Mm-hmm. And he's doing something in a young man, 20, how old are you? 20, what are you? 21 years old. Yeah. And what you're basically doing is testing it to see if it's true. And you're finding out every time that when you do what it says, it does make you better in your health, in your anxiety. Mm-hmm. This is like the mantra, the mission of what we're trying to do here in Fight Club, is to say, put it to the test. If you say that you love God, but you don't do what he says, it won't work for you. And you'll go, oh, I've tried that. But you haven't actually done what he said. But when you start eating the way that he says, when you start living the way that he says, right, it changes your life. So, man, I love the long story short, or however we want to say it.
Yeah, well, I think it comes down, just quickly, I think it comes down to like justification and then like sanctification. Like justification being like, okay, Jesus is king. I've justified it. Like nothing will change my mind. And then the sanctification is what happened to me comes after. It's like, well, how you feel in your body. You don't feel very well, so what are you putting in? It's like you've not been outside for 5 days, so maybe that's why you feel anxious and you have no energy. And then you start putting all these things. The Lord is sanctifying me, and this isn't me. This is Christ. The perfect. It's not me, but it's Christ who's in me, and He just showed me all these sorts of things that I just had to change how I lived. And I feel like probably close to 90% of Christian men out there are not where they want to be with their health or their fitness, and maybe not even their faith. And that's because nobody's really taught them what the truth is. There's so much noise and there's so much distraction. There's so much do this diet or take this supplement. And I'm not about that. I'm just about, well, what does the Bible say? What did the people in the Bible eat? How did they live? What did they do? The Bible even tells us that the sun is good. It's made by God, but we're told to maybe stay inside. But there's ways around it. You go outside early in the morning, you go late at night. You don't try and get burnt. I'm not asking anybody to go and get sunburnt, but I'm asking you that the sun gives you life. It gives you energy. If you cut yourself off, then you won't have any, just like a plant. It'll die. So there's all of these sorts of things that I started putting together. Okay, I'm being sanctified now. I then started to realize that pornography is not God's design for me. It's not God's design for anyone. God's design is one man, one woman inside the covenant of marriage under the Lord. And I started, okay, well, I don't want this anymore. I want marriage, and I like it again. I'm not perfect. This whole front half of the year for me was filled with lust relapses and fill myself with pride. Well, I don't need God. I can do this myself. And then I ran into more injuries, and I was like, well, I can do this. I can heal it. I did it before. I can do it again. I just kept running in circles, and I put the Bible on the shelf. I was like, well, I'm waking up late, so I've got no time to read the Bible. I'm waking up late. I was sleeping I just started getting into all the bad habits again until recently I've been like, let's dial it in. I went on holiday to Spain and, I got a good reset there and I was like, well, look, you're doing the same thing again. You're falling down. And I feel like, there will be seasons where I slip up. There will be seasons where I've maybe not got any time to read my Bible because my wife is pregnant or I'm leading church, whatever it may be. But if I can still prioritize 5 minutes, 5 minutes, that's nothing. I just used to make, even this year, I'm making excuses. What's 5 minutes? I probably scroll my phone for 50 minutes in the morning. What's 5 for the Bible? What's 5 for God? Nothing, because you can use that 5 and turn it into more. You can, and like everybody, most Christians will tell you, they read their Bible and they feel better, more energized, more focused, more disciplined, and which builds you in this consistent pattern of you don't need to read the Bible to be saved, no doubt, but it will enhance the quality of your life, how you live, how you act to others, how you react. It will influence everything that you do on a daily basis, and that's why I'm even here I'm rationalizing to myself this year. I'm like, well, look, again, you're doing the wrong things. It's not working out. Let's go back to the basics.
That's it. That's it.
So it comes back to that.
Yeah, man, and that's where a lot of what I spend my time doing now is teaching men what we said in the very beginning. Your story is everybody's story. Your life is exactly where it is based on the habits and routines of your life. And we live so haphazard that we are like all in or all out. And if we could just learn, like research says, like 40 to 50% of your day is based on habit that you just do without even thinking. The way you go shower, the way you go to school, the way you wake up, your morning routine, your evening routine, you don't even think about it. You're just like, well, this is just my life, but it's habitual. And my point to guys is exactly what you just said. What if we could learn to purposefully build in routines that aligned with the man you want to be? Right? If you could create habit, your brain doesn't have to think hard. It's just going to naturally, eventually tie your shoes. When's the last time you tied your shoes and consciously thought, put this loop over this, You don't do it anymore, but you tie your shoes without thought. You drive down the road and you're like, holy crap, I didn't even think, I wasn't even thinking. I was like, my mind was somewhere else. How did I get there safely? Your brain works well that way, the way that God made you. What if we could intentionally focus on our health? What if we could build habits of health, habits of spiritual discipline, what routines, defaults, I don't care what you call it, but your behaviors align perfectly for the results you got today. And when your behaviors go off course and you stop doing the basics, reading your Bible, conversing with other fellow believers, all these things, well, it's exactly why the results turn out that way. So anyways, what you're doing is the pathway. What you've done is, God has given you a hunger and thirst for his word, and I hope that you'll always stay in that because that is the answer, right? Not the word, but the word introduces you to the King who can change your life, and you have such a strong story there. As we wrap up here, though, I want you to just how do guys find you? And what does that look like? What are some of the things maybe that you're offering guys, and how do they find you after this if they want to connect or learn more about, what you're trying to do in terms of fitness and health and aligning it with God's word?
Yeah, well, it comes down to I feel that close to 90% probably of Christian males are operating at 50% lower capacity than what they could be. That comes to in their faith, that comes to leading their family, having energy, having focus to be able to play with their kids after work. That comes to, providing finances and being able to work and maybe promotions because they don't have the energy, they don't have the clarity, the brain fog. It comes down to fitness, not being where you want to be, not having the energy, again, being maybe overweight or having lack of muscle and all these things that they get put on the back burner for the daily life. It becomes like this whole big thing where if your health is suffering, they all say your health is your wealth. If you've not got health, you won't have wealth, and you just don't have time for family, don't have time for the right things. You maybe overreact, you get antsy, you start to look in the mirror and you start to think, well, who is this guy? Where did he go? Where did the old version of me go? Why can't I look in the mirror and be confident in myself? Not be egotistical, because we don't build for ego. We build to look well and be strong so we can serve. And I know when I had all those injuries, my dad would be like, can you help me lift the box of the car? And I'd be like, I physically can't. It's like my back is excruciating, my wrist is excruciating, I've got sore feet, I physically can't. It's like, people are probably looking at me going, who's that kid? He should be the fittest guy in the room, 16, 17, 18, but yet he's got back pain of like an 85-year-old man, Isn't
that crazy?
It becomes this whole big thing again, all these revelations I had. I was like, well, I shouldn't be that. I should be indestructible. My body is designed to be this healing machine that runs me and everything so I can serve people. I can serve my family, serve my community, lead at church, lead at work, serve the Lord ultimately. You know, and
That's
when
right.
you can't serve others, I felt like I wasn't serving the Lord because I wasn't serving others.
It's
And
true.
it becomes this whole big cycle of like,
Mm-hmm.
if your body's dysfunctional, your life's going to be slightly dysfunctional. You know,
Mm-hmm.
there's going to be things where you maybe put off and you can't do this, that, and the next thing. And I know it all too well because I was that guy. Even at this young age,
Yeah.
I was that guy who
Yeah.
missed out on opportunities to help his family. And, like if I had a wife, I'd be like, who knows what it would have been like then? I'd be like, well, can't do this, I can't do this, can't do this. She'd be like, well, you call yourself a man?
Mm-hmm.
It's like those things in comments. Like if we have a broken down body, or you leave yourself open to. I believe you leave yourself open to spiritual attacks. You leave yourself open to then anxiety of what's going to happen. How long am I going to be out? How long am I going to be overweight? You then leave yourself susceptible to depression. It's like, well, if you can't do this for your wife, or you can't do this for your family, then who's to say this might not happen, or this might not? Then you get depressed, and then you slump lower and lower. So you just binge watching TV. You just binge the Doritos, the snacks. You fall into old habits that you shouldn't be falling into, but you're falling into them anyway. And you can't serve, and it becomes this whole big loop of like, you just keep going deeper and deeper. And like I said, we've been on here for the last 40 minutes, and I've told everyone I was that guy. I just kept falling deeper and deeper and deeper. And I know the consequences of having poor health becomes spiritual warfare. It becomes a spiritual attack where you then have to you then become in like a constant battle in your mind of, am I good enough? Will I ever be good enough? Will I ever have a functional body where I don't need to think about it? And now I sit here saying, okay, again, me, maybe not still where I want to be, still recovering from years of trauma, stress, anxiety, but from where I used to be, I'm like 100 times better now.
Yeah.
The way I feel my body, the way I look after it, I'm on cloud nine. Like my business work hours, I can work longer, I can work harder, I'm more focused, I get more done. And this all comes from being in shape, but because everything's connected. Your gut's connected to your brain, and what you eat affects how you feel. It's basic science. People will tell you that, but it's science. What you put inside your gut becomes what you feel in your brain. And if you feed it with junk food, processed food, all these sorts of things that are like making you feel like junk, you will then think and act like junk. And it becomes this whole big cycle of what you feed is how you feel. And again, I know that all too well. So I think that Christian men all around the world are operating at probably less than 50% capacity than what they think they're capable of in terms of what work they can put in, how much time they can give their family, what they can do. And that's because we're just, like me, we're making excuses for it. Well, I don't have time to read my Bible this morning, or it's easier if I just go to the snack bar and grab this, or it's easier if I go to McDonald's and do that. And it becomes this whole big cycle of, but what's that doing to me in the long run? What's not reading my Bible? What's fueling my body junk? What's that doing to me in the next 3 months, 6 months, years down the line? Well, I'm becoming more and more depressed. I have less and less energy. I'm not happy. And even for me, when I had anxiety really bad and low energy, I at points you don't want to read your Bible. You don't want to pray. You fall deeper and deeper. You don't want to go outside. You don't want to walk. But when you do all those things in reverse, when you read your Bible, when you walk, when you eat God's food, when you get out, when you make friendships, you make brotherhoods, you serve your family, you serve your community, you feel on cloud nine. And you then become less susceptible to the spiritual attacks that come from fueling your body the wrong way and acting the wrong way. And that's, some people like to start like, well, how can you link faith to health and fitness? And I was like, bro, to be honest, I've not got a clue, And I sit here having, again, probably a basic understanding of how they both link, and there's scriptures to back it up. 1 Corinthians 6, 19, 20. Honor the Lord your God with the body. It's a temple of the Holy Spirit that lives within you. So why are we feeding it rubbish? So I just feel there's a lot of time and money and effort and memories that a lot of guys, and even women, if there's women listening to this, that Christian men and women are leaving on the table when it comes to their health. And it's much more simple than you think. It comes down to eating the right way, living the right way, and then it just becomes an autopilot. You just don't need to overthink it. So
it's so good. And again, it's really the genesis of this ministry called Get in the Fight, because that was exactly my journey. I won't share it now. It's in the shows and shared at other times, but it's exactly where I was at too. You're out of the fight and you need to get into it. And the first steps I took to get back into the fight to being a better man for me was physical fitness and health. All of those areas of your life are interconnected. So you can't be spiritually at your best when you're physically at your worst. We know that. but we don't have the systems in place to change our lives. We don't have the order of our day down. And so now when you're relying on willpower to do it, it lets you down all the time.
Exactly, yeah.
So you need habits, you need defaults, you need systems that you focus on that will help you to align your behavior with your belief. And that's really where, again, what you and I are doing are similar in what we're trying to do. So, man, I'm so grateful for your time, man, and for your love for Jesus is super cool. Your story is amazing. Your accent is world class, just so cool. I'm glad I didn't talk as much in this one because I just want to hear you say words like I think everybody else will
well,
too.
I paid my accent, so maybe somebody out there enjoys it. Good to know.
It's so good. It's so good, Braveheart. And listen, man, I love what you're doing. I love what you're about. Keep following the Lord. Keep staying true to his word. And man, the Lord will bless you and guide you and give you those desires of your heart when you just do the things that you're doing, man. So I'll make sure that in the show notes we'll connect guys to how they can find you and connect with you and encourage you. If you're a guy listening to the show, check him out. Super active on X, and you'll be able to follow his journey, follow him every day, kind of see what he's about. But Nairn, thank you so much for joining today, man. Super cool.
It's been a pleasure. I appreciate you having me on, and yeah, hopefully there's a few guys listening who maybe got something out of my story and took some value.
There's no doubt.
Yeah, I hope so.
There's no doubt. Well, guys, listen, thanks for listening again to the show. Do me a quick favor again. Go hit the subscribe button, the notification button. When you do that, when you get connected, it helps me to connect with more Christian men from around the world. And so thank you for subscribing and listening. Go to getinthefight.club. All kinds of free stuff there. Just click on the free stuff tab. I would love to connect with you there. But get in the fight. Stay in it today. And we'll see you soon. Thanks. Hey, guys, thanks so much for being here today and listening to the show. Please be sure to head over to the website at getinthefight.club. And before you go, if you haven't already, please subscribe, click the like button, and leave us a positive 5-star review. It makes a huge difference whenever you do. Have a great day. Go get in the fight.